Okay, well, we are in Mark lesson 7. We are in Mark lesson 7. Yeah, not Luke. And last week, we were in chapter 11. This week we're 12 and 13. But last week in chapter 11, we had the triumphal entry. So remember that they have left the Galilee region and they've come to Jerusalem. So now they're in Jerusalem. And we need to go back to Mark 11, verse 27 to get the setting of where they are and who Jesus is talking to at the beginning of chapter 12. So in Mark 11, 27 to 33, where are they and what's taking place?
They're in Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
And walking in the temple.
They're in Jerusalem and they're walking in the temple. Okay. In the temple. And who approaches Jesus, and what is their question?
Priests and the elders.
Yeah. So you have the priests, the scribes, and the elders who come to him in the temple and ask what?
By what authority?
Yeah. By what authority are you doing these things? Okay. So get the picture here. They're in the temple. The temple courts, okay, so you have a very large area outside. The temple sits here, and then a very large area outside of the temple courts where people are gathering. This is Passover time. So Passover means people are coming to the temple to celebrate the Passover, which is an annual celebration. So there are a lot of people there. So what's happening in these few chapters is taking place, in the temple. In that court area where he's walking around, people are there. Crowds of people would be there. So you have the high priest, the chief priest, and the scribes asking him about by what authority do you do this? And he said to them, he asked a question about John the Baptist. By what authority do you think that he was from heaven or not? And they wouldn't answer, and he said, well, then I'm not going to tell you by what authority I do these things. Remember that? So now that takes us to chapter 12. Chapter 12. Because it's just a continuation. It says, and he began to speak to them in parables. So who is the them? Right, it's the chief priests and the elders and the scribes. That's why we had to go back to chapter 11 to get the setting, because chapter 12 just starts off with, it's continuing. We're still in the temple. I'm still speaking to the chief priests and the elders. I'm not going to tell you by where my authority comes from. But then he speaks to them in a parable, right? In a parable. What is this? Verses 1 through 12. What is the essence of this parable that he is speaking to the chief priests and the elders?
It's the parable of the tenants.
Okay, the tenants.
You want more information?
Yeah, you want to explain a little bit more about...
There were tenants living on the master's property, and he sent a servant to collect, and they killed him. One of them, he sent multiple ones. Like one of them was killed, or several of them killed, and some were just beaten up, but they were all sent away empty-handed for work.
Mm-hmm.
And so finally, he said, well, I'm going to send my beloved son, because they'll respect him, because he's my son.
Yeah.
And they killed him.
And they killed him. So what's the essence of that, and what was the result? Why was he speaking to them in parables? You looked up some cross-references about why was he speaking in parables. In Mark 4.
I was going to say, because earlier he had said that for the disciples he was speaking clearly.
Right.
But for those on the others, those who don't believe, then he's speaking in parables.
And do you remember why we said what was the value of speaking in a parable to people who are not believers?
I think it was an attempt to help people get the picture.
An attempt to help them get the picture. Yeah, because they would understand a physical, earthly illustration, and then they could maybe get the spiritual understanding of that. Right?
Smaller pieces.
Right, in smaller pieces, because they were not accepting who he was, right? So he's trying to show them with a parable, like, if you understand this, then you'll understand this. What did they understand about that parable? What was their reaction?
Those are talking about them.
Yeah,
They are the tenants.
yeah. They got it. They understood that he was talking about them. The chief priests, the scribes, and the elders, right? He's talking about us. What did we do? What did we do? We killed the prophets, right? We killed the prophets. When God sent prophets, we killed them. And now he says, see the parallels. I'm going to send my beloved son. Surely they will respect him. But they didn't. Okay? So they understand. They might not understand the truth, but they understand that he was speaking to them, right? About them. And so what did they want to do? They wanted to arrest him. Okay? They wanted to arrest him, but why didn't they? Okay. The people, because of the people. And here we are, remember it's Passover. And there's a lot of Jews there to celebrate Passover. We're in the temple area, in the courts, and there's people, and so they can't arrest him. They feared that.
Right, they feared that. So there must have been something wrong with that reaction. If it was the right thing to do, it would have been the right thing.
Right, if it was the right thing to do, it would have been the right thing to do. Yeah. Yeah. So,
I think that their fear of the people was because of the timing of the triumph.
was there fear of the people because of the timing of the events?
Because of what had just happened. Because not very long after that.
Yeah.
That fear's not there.
Leading up to the, not long after what? The fear's not there.
This happens, not after, because
Okay.
this is right after the triumphal.
The triumphal entry.
where people are laying down their crosses.
Right, right. Right,
But
because,
a week later,
yeah,
they're not afraid to.
yeah, right. So right now the people are supporting Jesus in great numbers because he's marching into Jerusalem and people are laying down thinking he's coming to establish the kingdom, the earthly kingdom. Yeah. And remember back through earlier chapters that has always been the attitude of these Pharisees towards Jesus? What have they wanted from the beginning?
Who's that? I'm gone.
What's, oh. Yeah, for him to be gone, to kill him. How can we get rid of this guy? Because he was a threat to them. Remember, they are the religious leaders. They are the teachers of the law, and he's a threat. And so from the very beginning, they're like, how can we get rid of him? So now, here we are at the temple, and they question his authority. He tells them, you are the ones who have killed the prophets. You are not listening. They know that he's talking about them. But now we see a series of events where they are sending people to him to what, Sue? To trap him. To trap him. So the rest of this chapter is about who approaches Jesus to set up a trap, to try to trap him so that he can be arrested. So who are the first people? In 13. Okay. So see it says, and they sent to him. So the chief priests and the scribes, they are orchestrating this. And they sent to him some of the Pharisees and some of the Herodians to trap him. So what's the trap they're trying to set here? What are they saying?
About the payment tax.
It's about paying taxes. Okay, it's about paying taxes. Should we pay taxes or should we not? You say yes? Is that what Jesus said?
Sadly, he said that.
Sadly, he said yes. Yes. We're in tax season, right? Sadly, he said yes. Okay, well, let's talk about that, about us. Do we pay taxes?
More and more.
Yeah. More and more, yeah. What did he say when he looked at that coin? Because on the coin was the face of Caesar. What did he say?
Whose likeness and inscription is this?
Caesar.
Caesar's give it to him. It's
Yeah.
It was the authority on earth at that time.
Mm-hmm.
It's like here, if I not agree with the authority, but still I have to respect because
Right.
it's the authority. The
Right.
only thing I can do if I not agree with that person or something is pray.
So give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and then give to God what is God's. So how do we then, we balance it? Yes, we have to give our taxes, right?
Well, I've been in countries that don't pay their taxes, and I haven't, those are the countries I felt the most unsafe in.
The most unsafe, yeah. Yeah. So there are laws that we have to abide by. But he says, but also then give to God what is God's.
This is a little funny to me because they're like, we're going to get him on a technicality because he's going to say you don't have to pay your taxes.
Yeah. Right, that, yeah.
But like, it just feels like like all those mobsters that got sent to prison because of tax evasion or something like that. Like, they didn't go to prison because of what they actually did. Like, that was horrible. They did this other thing. It's just,
That's how they got Al Capone.
it just made me laugh.
That is how they got Al Capone, yeah. Yes, yeah, yeah.
A little, like just the wrong thing to say.
And remember that it's the religious leaders that are asking him. So if he says, yes, you have to give to Caesar, then he's endorsing the Roman rule. But what does he say? Give to him what belongs to him, but don't give him the honor that belongs to God. Right? Give to God what belongs to him. Caesar thinks that he can be, receive all the honor, but it's like, no, you don't give him that honor. You pay the taxes, but you don't give him that honor. That belongs to God. So he failed. He passed that test. Then who comes along next? Yep.
Before we move on to that,
Yep.
I think these men were changed because of their encounter. That last little sentence that says, and they marveled at him.
Oh, they marveled.
They didn't go there marveling. I think these men were, I don't know if they were saved, but they were changed
Yeah.
because of this encounter.
Yeah.
Well, and I wrote down that they were impressed by his wisdom.
Yep. Impressed by his wisdom, his teaching, marveled at him. There could be an opening there of they're starting to change how they feel about him.
And these are people that have been sent by
Right.
those chief priests. And that.
Right.
So, they won't
Yeah.
go themselves, but they send somebody else, and then those people come back and say, well, I really
Yeah.
marveled at this
Yeah.
answer. Like, well, that's not what I wanted.
That's, yeah, I did. Right, I didn't want that. Right. Yeah. 'Cause see, you have the Pharisees who are the religious leaders, but you also have the Herodians, which are the political leaders. Okay. So that's what they're trying to trap him in. If you say you give to Caesar, then you're honoring the Roman government. But if you say no, you don't have to, then
So
you're
would
just.
these be opposing groups that went together? Pharisees
They
and
were not opposing because there was a strong alliance between the Pharisees and the political leaders, because they were kind of trying to keep the peace. So they often did things together. Okay.
So the Pharisees were tax exempt?
Sorry, what?
The Pharisees were tax exempt people?
The Pharisees.
Probably they didn't pay tax.
Would the Pharisees be tax exempt? That's a good question.
I don't think so, because this isn't Jewish rule.
Right. It's Roman rule. So yeah. So now, who's the next group that comes to him? Again, trying to trap him. This is the Sadducees. Now, what do you know about the Sadducees?
And they're sad, you see.
And they're sad, you see, because they don't believe in the resurrection. Yes, that's how you can remember who doesn't believe.
They don't believe in angels or spirits.
Yeah, they don't believe in angels or spirits. They don't believe in the resurrection. But what is the question that they're asking? What's the topic of the question they're asking? Resurrection.
Fakes.
You don't believe in it, but you're asking. You're trying to trap him.
Why even ask if you don't?
Yeah. Why are you asking? Why are you asking? But they brought to him a law. Do you remember this? In other classes we've done about this law of the levirate. What is it? So they're bringing to him the law to say if
the
If-
husband dies, then his brother must marry his wife.
Right. And
And
s-
then they say something absolutely ridiculous.
yeah.
All the
Right, so they go to the extreme of 7 brothers. Yeah. So, but it is a law. So they're using the law again to try to trap him. So about something they don't believe. So what is his response to that? There's no marriage in heaven. No marriage in heaven. He says they're like angels in heaven, which again, the Sadducees don't believe in, right?
Also, you don't understand the scripture or the power of God.
Right. See, what does Jesus point out to them?
Because they don't understand what they're even talking about.
Right. You don't even understand what you're talking about. You don't know the scriptures, and you don't know the power of God. And you are wrong. So that test he passes, right? Now, what happens? The next one that comes is in verse 28. Who is that? A scribe. One of the scribes. See, the scribes came in the temple. There was a bunch of them with the chief priests and the scribes that he was talking to. But now you have one scribe that comes. What do you say about this particular scribe, and what is he asking?
Which commandment is the most important of all?
Which commandments are the most important of all? The scribes would know the commandments because they are the keepers of the law. The scribes, the Pharisees. So, and why did he feel like he could ask Jesus this question? What had he heard?
You listened to all this discussion. I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah.
That
He listened to everything and he heard Jesus giving good answers. So he's like, I'm going to ask him about which commandments are the most important, and what were the 2 commandments that Jesus said.
Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. And the next one was love your neighbor as yourself.
Okay? So what did you learn about those 2 commandments?
All the law and the prophets hang on these 2 commandments.
All the law and the prophets hang on those 2 commandments. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. How does that work? How do all the laws hang on those 2?
You won't kill somebody if you love them.
Oh, you're not going to kill somebody if you love them.
You won't covet someone's wife.
Right. If you love your neighbor as yourself, right? You're not going to kill them. You're not going to covet someone else's wife. You're not going to lie, steal.
You're not going to make images if you love God.
If you love God, you won't make images. Yeah. Yeah. And what did the scribe say? What was his reaction to this when Jesus said this? These are the 2.
He acknowledged.
He agreed with you are right.
And he acknowledged Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah, he acknowledged that Jesus was right. And Jesus said to him, what?
You are not far from the
You are not far from the kingdom.
It's a nice transition from the 2 discussions.
This guy was pretty sincere.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a nice transition.
Nice transition from,
One trying to trap him and one trying
Right.
to really want to know.
right. The other's trying to trap him. This guy really wants to know.
No, yeah.
He really wants to know. Yeah. A little change in the direction here. You are not far from the kingdom. And after that last question, what was the result?
Nobody dared ask him any more questions.
Yeah. No one dared ask him any more questions. Yep. Why is that?
Because he answered well, and that's why this scribe asked him the question he asked him. And so why is no one daring to ask him any more questions?
I do know what you mean.
I think for me, that he wasn't sent by the chief priest.
Right.
He was not somebody who was sent. And so for me, I see these two episodes, which I've never really seen before. They send these people, they send these people, and then this person gets to the heart of the matter, and it draws that evil away, and it just kind of, his beautiful question just kind of got to the heart of the matter, and it just shut people up.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I felt. It was really beautiful, like,
And also, when I first read, and the scribe said to him, "You are right, teacher." I mean, I'm like, well, of course he's right. He's God. You know,
Right.
I mean, it sounded, you know, unless
Yeah.
Jesus went on to say, you know, that he saw that he answered wisely, and you are not far from the kingdom of God, I would have thought, well, that's a little attitude, kind of a little pompous. But since Jesus said, you know, he saw that he answered wisely, and he's not far from the kingdom, so then I said, well, if he doesn't take offense to
Yeah,
that, then
yeah,
I
yeah.
won't.
Well, think about this. Think about this. The scribe, does he know who Jesus is?
No,
Yeah.
I guess not really.
No. See, he calls him teacher. And in those times there were a lot of rabbis that would be teachers. Teachers, a lot of people referred to as teacher, as a rabbi. So he's not acknowledging him as Jesus, the Son of God, at this point. So he is, the scribe does know the law. And he would know which commandments were the most important. So when Jesus he's kind of passing that test, and the scribe's like, yes, you're right, those are the most important commandments. But, so he doesn't know yet, and that's why Jesus says, you're not far from the kingdom. You're beginning to understand. Yeah.
And
So-
if I understand, because when they had, the scribe had the commandments, it's love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul. They didn't have the other part of love your neighbor as yourself. Right? This part of those two, bringing them together.
Which verses?
When Jesus said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, and then love your neighbor as yourself. Is that the first time he bring those two together? Because in the Ten Commandments, it said love the Lord your God.
Yeah, love your God.
Yeah. So for them, they know that part. It's like Jesus added
Yeah.
that, love your neighbor as yourself. He added, it's like he bring both
Bring those two.
together.
Yeah.
But I feel like for them, it might be the first time
Might be the first time they've heard
they
that.
have that connection
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah,
bringing them together.
yeah, yeah. But we have to remember, we're looking back and we can see who Jesus was at that point, but they are in the midst of it. They are not yet understanding that he is the Son of God. So when they ask questions like that, they're not recognizing him as Jesus, the Son of God. The others are trying to trap him, okay? But we see this movement. Yeah. It's always good to remember where we are in history when we're reading this, because it's different for us. We can clearly understand it, but they couldn't. So it's a process. So he continued to teach in verse 35. He's still in the temple. He's still in the temple. And what is he teaching? See, he's dealt with questions that came from individuals, from groups. And they're not asking him any more questions. And now he's still teaching. And if you look at verse 37, he teaches 35, 36, 37, but who is he turning to? Who is he teaching at this point? In 37.
large, yeah,
Yeah.
people who were there at the temple.
Yeah. It says a large crowd or a great throng heard him. They heard him. Remember, it's Passover time. Remember, they're in the temple courts. And remember, there's a lot of people there. And so now he's answered these questions, but now he's turning and he's teaching the crowd that has gathered. So they're anxious to listen to him. They're anxious to listen.
He starts with a question too. He's like, okay, I've heard all these questions, now I got a question.
Okay. Yeah, you've heard all these. Now I have a question. And what's his question? Yeah, about...
How can the scribes say that Christ is the Son of God?
Okay.
David.
The son of David. The son of David. So we've brought David into this before. Why is David mentioned?
Yeah, because they say that the Messiah will be the son of David.
The Messiah will be the son of David. He will come from the line of David. Okay. So what do you think the point is that Jesus is trying to make? Is this, how can the scribes say that the Christ is the son of David? And then what is he quotes? What's the quote he gives from the Old Testament?
David himself saying, the Lord said to my Lord.
So David himself said, the Lord said to my Lord. It's a little confusing, right?
Yeah. What is the Lord doing?
But he's saying, what is he saying? If David himself calls him Lord, okay, and basically what he's saying is Jesus is more than the son of David. Okay? He is more than the son of David. He is the Messiah. He is David's Lord. So he's like, I'm both. He's trying to introduce that. I'm both the son of David. I come from the line of David. The Messiah comes from the line of David. But I'm also David's Messiah, David's Lord. So it's this dual road that he's just trying to point out to the scribes. Okay. So what does he say to this throng of people? Whoops, wrong side of the page. In verse 38, beware. Okay, beware of them. Why beware of them? What do?
They just walk and they receive honor and they take advantage of it.
They want to receive honor wherever they go.
They take advantage of people.
Take advantage of people. Who are they taking advantage of? The widows. Okay, the widows. The vulnerable. Courtney? For appearance sake. Long prayers for appearance sake. Right. Beware of them. Beware of them. They are not believers, right? They are just living according to the law. And they have power and position, and they're using that. They're using that. Look at the contrast of how they devour widows' houses. And then in the next section, when he sits down opposite the treasury, and who does he see put money in? Okay, the widow, the poor widow. So he calls the disciples over, and what's the lesson he's showing them?
He's giving out of what she doesn't have.
Giving out of what she does not have.
Yeah, giving out of poverty.
Yeah,
The sacrifice is more important than the amount. that
Right.
you give.
right. The sacrifice is more important than the amount. The rich people came and just put in a lot of money, okay? But it really cost them nothing, right? But the widow whom the Pharisees take advantage of, right? She puts in out of her poverty. So there's a principle about giving.
No, the chapter 13 talks about the end of the times, and I just see like a connection with the 38 and the 38 and 38, 39 and 40 with this, because it's like one of the things that we're gonna know in the end of the times is the false teaching. So the
False teachers, right.
The false pastors too.
Right,
And you
right.
see a lot of pastors. They just want to honor, and then it's like, why they are taking all these people you're teaching completely wrong.
Right. Beware.
And
Yeah.
they ask for money, and then all this
Right,
stuff.
right. Beware of all of that. Beware. Yeah, so let's jump into 13. Okay, because 13. Now where are they going now?
I just want to question.
Yeah.
you said in the line of David, I just wondered why they say it in this way, the son of David, when he's, like, it's really way down the line, you know?
When they say son, it could skip generations. It's just that you come from that ancestry, from that line. Like if you went to Ancestry.com and you put in your DNA, and it would take you back to David's line. So when they say son of, it could be the grandfather, it could be the great-grandfather, it could be several generations. But the son of is just because you've come from that line of David, which is very important because God promised that there would always be a ruler from David's line to sit on the throne. And the Messiah is going to come through his genealogy. So that's why they refer to the son of. It's not like immediate son of. It's generations, okay?
It's in Matthew 1, no?
Matthew 1.
It's all the generations.
Yeah, Matthew 1 is the genealogy of Jesus, and you will see David in there.
And isn't that like culturally what they would do, like where the children, like Jacob and
Yeah, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right.
Like were
The fathers. Yeah, so they always refer back to the Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and then on. So, and from Jacob, the 12 tribes, and eventually Jesus. Okay. Yeah, so that's why it's not like last generation. It's way beyond, but it's prophesied. It's prophesied that he would be from David. Okay, so David was really big in the Jewish culture. So that's that. So then now they're leaving the temple. Okay, they're leaving the temple and they walk out of the temple, and what does the disciple say to him?
They're marveling at the architecture.
Yeah, they're marveling at the architecture. The temple, it's a fantastic building. It was one of the wonders of the world at that point. And I just have a little picture I can show you. It will be similar to what it looks like, but it's very marvelous. Okay. Yeah. And very giant-sized stones that it was built with, which would be so amazing. When you actually see the temple, or the walls, or what's left of it, you see, it was one of the major wonders of the world. And so and here are these guys from Galilee, they come into the city, it's like kind of that thing, like, wow, the Sears Tower. wow, But they're marveling at it. So Jesus takes this opportunity to teach them what? Now remember, this is his last week of life. We've celebrated Palm Sunday, and he's heading towards the cross. So this is his last week of life, and he is taking time to teach them. What is he teaching them about? The end times. The end times. So they're sitting on the Mount of Olives across from the temple, looking at it. And what does Jesus say about that temple, that marvelous temple? It's going to be destroyed. Not one stone upon another. Now you're looking at this structure and you're saying, how could that be? What was the two questions they asked him? When? When will this happen, and what are the signs so we'll know when it's about to happen? Okay. So let's take this apart. And Jesus said to them, see, what does he say first of all?
See that no one leads
A warning, a warning. See that no one leads you astray. Many will come. This is what Sandra was saying, like false prophets, right? Many will come in my name, and they will try to lead many astray. But don't be alarmed. Know this. Know this. This is what is going to happen. And then what? So be on guard. What's going to happen to them? What does he say will happen to them?
When he starts talking about wars and rumors of war, there's a long list. Nation will rise against nation, earthquakes, famines.
And they'll be-
You yourself are going to be persecuted.
Mm-hmm.
These are the beginning of birth pains.
The beginning of birth pains, yes. It's not happening yet, okay?
But when, not if.
Yeah, but when, not if, okay? If you've had a baby, you know, right? It's going to happen. It's going to happen. So, but these are just the beginnings of birth pains. It's not happening yet. Do we have wars and rumors of wars? Yeah. Every generation has had wars and rumors of wars. Okay? But it's not happening yet. There are other signs that will take place.
Because the gospel has to be preached to the nation.
What's that, Courtney?
The gospel needs to be preached.
Yes, because the gospel, verse 10, right? The gospel needs to be preached to all nations, okay? Guess whose responsibility that's going to be? The disciples.
Because in 9, he says, be on guard because you're going to be arrested because you're going to stand before
Right.
them as a testimony.
Yes. So again, put yourself in that time in history. Jesus is going to be crucified, and now you're left to go out and preach the gospel. And what's going to happen to you? You're going to be brought before, you'll be arrested, you'll be brought before the leaders, the government, and what you'll be beaten, you will be killed. It's like, yes, sign me up for that job. Yeah, right. Just sign me up.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right. Sounds awesome. Yeah. It sounds awesome. But he says, don't. When they bring you to trial, don't worry about what. Why not?
Because the Holy Spirit is going to.
The Holy Spirit is going to tell you what to say. Tell you what to say. Now, in addition to all of that good news, what else is going to happen? Where will opposition come from?
From family.
From family. From family. From close relationships. Just know, he's like, just know, if you are my follower and you are out there preaching the gospel, you are going to have opposition from the government and from close family relationships. We have, we experience that today. Believers who are in unbelieving families, there's this opposition because they don't believe. So, but they were going to face this in the immediate future after Jesus died, right? In the immediate future. He's like, I want you to know this. You will be hated because of my name. Doesn't sound good. Doesn't sound good. But, yes, but the one who endures to the end will be saved. Will be saved. Where's our ultimate destination? Heaven, okay? How do we have eternal life? We believe. And we persevere and we stand firm. Because the gospel has to be preached to every nation, right? So, and if you stand firm to the end, then you will be saved. But look at day 5 of your homework, page 89. So he's warning them about what their life is going to be like because they are followers of his. And then 14 to 27, what are the events in 14 to 27? You were to make a list of them in order how they're going to happen.
These are in the future, no?
Okay, is this in the future?
Or probably like the close future, I would say.
Okay.
How do you not know that the gospel's been proclaimed throughout all the nations, like with, technology now, and how do we know what nations are left? And they say nations, each country, what are they talking about?
Yeah, right. Well, there are organizations that can tell you where like the countries are that have not received the gospel, right? So it has not gone out to the whole world yet. There are countries that don't have CNN, like you're not going to get the gospel on CNN, but that technology you're talking about, You know, so there are still areas, there are still people that haven't heard, that haven't not heard. I'll tell you a little. Wendy was having a little time. Wendy is 6. She was having a little time with her 2 friends, Eva and Coco, and they're like 6 and 8. And they invited a little new girl in the neighborhood over to their house to play. And something was said about heaven, and the little girl said, "I don't know what heaven is." And Eva says, "Coco, go get the Bible." So here are these little kids, okay, telling this little girl who has never heard about heaven, you know.
It's kind of, I think the gospel is already in all the world, in all the language, and even like small, very far places. And then even though in some countries, like I will say Middle East countries, and the Bible say that in the last days, they're going to dream. And then if you see a lot of testimonies, the people from the Middle East, they say, "Oh, I have a dream," and they accept Christ. So,
Right.
yeah, and
Yeah.
then, but sometimes it's like sad because like here we hear about the gospel and everything, but some people just close their eyes and say, there is no God, so they don't teach the kids.
Right.
And then it's like the little,
Right.
little kid, I know some
Right.
kids, they probably the parents never told them about the
Right.
giving or anything.
Right.
Because they don't want to.
Right. So you,
But it's like,
yeah.
I
So
think-
there are children not being taught, like this situation. So this, what he's talking about here is future, okay? When he talks about you're going to be beaten for my sake, you're going to be arrested, all of that, that's an immediate thing that's going to happen, right? And then, but it jumps to the end times. How do we know that it jumps to the end times?
Because the abomination of desolation hasn't been standing in the holy place.
Okay, the abomination of desolation has not yet been standing in the holy place. What did you learn about the abomination of desolation?
He's standing
That's the
where at.
Antichrist who will take up residence in the temple.
Yeah, he will take up residence in the temple,
And declare himself to be God.
declare himself to be God. And then, this comes from Daniel when there's the 7-year covenant that he makes with the Jewish people. And in the middle of that, he sets himself up in the temple, he stops sacrifices, and that's in the middle of that 7 years. So that's when the abomination of desolation sets himself up. When you see that, then what? Run. Run. When you see that, you run. Okay.
But that's like the rapture happened.
Okay, we this is just a lunchtime class, okay? We cannot get into Revelation with when the rapture is happening.
I
But
thought the rapture happened before this.
yes. Well, I believe yes. But it says, in those days, there will be such tribulation as has not been from the beginning of creation that God created until now and never will be again. So we know that. Has any of that happened yet? No. So that is future. That is future. So what happens is, and I'm sure these disciples thought, okay, when the temple is destroyed, that's like the beginning of the end times, okay? Because that's all that they knew. But he's taking them far beyond. It's like prophecy usually has a now and later. It's like I always keep this in my Bible for this purpose. So this is the mountain outside my house in Colorado. I look straight at it from my dining room table. Okay, that's what I look at every morning. But prophecy is like, okay, this is going to happen now. These guys are going to be arrested now. They're going to have to go to trial. They're going to have to, stand firm in that end. But what the rest of that prophecy is like this. So here, see this peak here? That's this one. But I'm now driving around the side of it looking at the range, okay? So there's identical peaks, this one and this one. And what you don't see in prophecy is you see this one, but you don't see the valley in between and the second peak that is bright straight behind it. So that's how you can explain, prophecy is like now you see this one, and then the second one comes much later. So there's a big gap in time here. But we can know because it says the tribulation that has never been and never will be again. And what will happen at that time? What will happen with the stars and the moon and the sun? Yes. And then, when that happens, and then what do you see coming in the clouds? The Son of Man, okay? In all of his glory.
Yeah, so it'll be dark, but he'll be the sun. I mean,
Yeah, you'll see, yeah, yes, right. Is that exciting? Yeah.
So this is the second coming.
That's the second coming. Yeah, that's the second coming. But that is not something that these disciples are going to see. What they're going to see after his death and resurrection is they are going to be out there sharing the gospel, and they are going to be arrested, and they are going to be put on trial, and they are going to suffer persecution and opposition. But if they persevere to the end, they will be saved. They will be saved. And then the end. This is totally in the future. The end. And the Son of Man will come. And then he will send out his angels and gather the elect from all the four corners of the earth. Okay? This is end. This is the end. This is when there will be a new heaven and a new earth. This is when the kingdom will be established. The kingdom that we're talking about, the kingdom that they are hoping for on earth is actually the kingdom, the eternal kingdom. Okay? And that's when it's going to happen.
And verse 30 is usually the verse that's
Verse 30?
continuous. Yeah.
Oh, this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. Yeah. And there again, generation is used in two different ways. Generation could be your contemporaries, okay? But generation can also be that whole line of descendants of Abraham. So like the whole Jewish nation, the whole nation of Israel will not pass away until these things have taken place. So it's one of those generation, but also generation. So it's not necessarily a timing of things. It's more of a
Since I looked that up, they seem to be referring to a people, not
a people. A people. A lot of scripture is about the nation of Israel. It's about the nation of Israel. And so in the end, it's going to go back to the nation of Israel where God starts dealing with them in the tribulation time. But he says, you'll know, here's the sign, the fig tree. The fig tree. What is he trying to point out with the fig tree?
I thought it was the same as with the pains of...
The birth
that
pains.
From nature, you know that when you see this,
Mhm.
then this is going
yeah.
to follow.
Right.
That this is a sign. When you see the blood come.
Right. That you know summer's coming, right? I mean, we're seeing that right now, but
Kind of.
we're not sure summer's coming, right? Yes, right. But that's what he's saying. Look around you. When you see what I'm talking about, you know it's coming. It's coming. But in the meantime, what is his?
Stay awake.
Stay awake. Stay awake. Be on guard because you don't know. There's that parable about, again, another parable. The servants, he puts servants in charge, and you don't know what time of day that the master is coming back. So be on guard. Stay awake. Be alert. Stand strong to the end. Don't be afraid of opposition. The gospel has to be preached. And then one day we will see Jesus coming in the clouds. Yeah. Amen. Come, Lord Jesus, come. Right?
But that's
Yes.
still to happen.
Yes, right. So in the meantime, we're in this generation that's here, and we're going to be proclaiming the gospel, and we're going to stay awake. And don't be fooled by false prophecies, by false teachers, false teachers.
Good pair of running shoes handy.
Yeah, get your running shoes handy. Yes. But watch the temple. Watch the Jewish nation. Watch that temple.